Hi everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about the books that I read in the months of November and December. I decided to just combine these 2 months because I read 3 books in November and then 4 books in December. In the future, going forward, I'm going to be making recent reads wrap-ups instead of monthly wrap-ups, just because my monthly count is kind of all over the place. Sometimes I read a lot and sometimes I read like 1 or 2 books. And so I figured let's just get rid of the monthly format and we're going to just wrap up 9 or 10 books. Whenever I finish 9 or 10 books, I'm going to be doing a wrap-up video. So that'll change going forward. But let's go ahead and talk about what I read in November and December. So I read a total of 7 books across those 2 months. And the biggest one was Oathbringer, for sure. My biggest book was 1,243 pages, and my smallest book was 208 pages. I read a total of 3,314 pages. In my genre breakdown, I read 4 fantasy, 2 classics, and 1 nonfiction. So the first book that I finished in November was Oathbringer, and this did take me most of November to read, which is why I didn't read as many books in November, because I read a lot of this in November. So Oathbringer is the 3rd book in the Stormlight Archives, and as you might know already, I was part of a read-along of the series. Stormalong 2020 was super fun. We did a live show for this, which is on Christy's channel from Christy Lewis Dostoevsky in Space. If you want to check that out, I will link her channel down below and her Stormalong 2020 playlist. There's lots of cool Stormlight Archives videos from different people, and we just had a great time reading this together and chatting together. This book was a complete roller coaster for me. I didn't love the first half of the book. I felt it was slow going. I was lost in a lot of the world building. Just wasn't sure where we were going. The book felt like it wandered for the first half. But of course, Sanderson is really just taking these things and building up towards a bigger picture, which you don't get until the end of his books, which is something I love about Sanderson. I love his big picture scope. And we get a lot of questions answered about the Cosmere in this book. Things that we had wondered about for most of the series, we finally got some answers in this one. So really enjoyed that part of this. I would say once the second half of the book got going, this became one of my favorite books in the series, which is kind of weird to say because I didn't love the first half, but the second half did so many great things. Dalinar's character has definitely the best development, I think, of any of the characters so far. I just loved seeing his journey. The ending of this book is the most epic ending out of the Stormlight books so far that I've read. Haven't finished Rhythm of War. I'm about halfway through Rhythm of War right now. But this ending really cinched it for me, and I enjoyed every second of the ending. Couldn't put it down at the end. And it is a fantastic entry. It's definitely one you have to take your time with. You have to be okay with the various pacing in it, but if you stick with it, it is, I think, totally worth it in the end. So this was a 5-star book for me. Next up, I attempted to read some nonfiction for Nonfiction November. I didn't read as much as I wanted to because of Oathbringer, but I did read one, and that was The Case for Faith by Strobel. I buddy read this with Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf, and we have a great time buddy reading things. This one was kind of a weird one to buddy read. We didn't necessarily have a lot to talk about with this one because it's so anecdotal in the way it's set up. I would say a big failing for this book for me was the structure, and it's just a little bit formulaic as you go. So what this book does is it takes different arguments against faith, different things that people have talked about against Christianity, and Lee Strobel goes around and he interviews different Bible scholars and kind of gets their 2 cents on things. So there's actually a whole bunch of these case for blank books. There's Case for Christ, Case for the Creator, Case for Faith, and then apparently there's a bunch more that I have not read. I don't think I'm going to be continuing with these just because I felt like a lot of the issues that were discussed in this book were discussed in the Case for Christ and the Case for the Creator. I didn't feel like I gained anything new. This really just felt like a recap of the previous books that I had read. It definitely has some interesting topics, but it wasn't anything mind-blowing that I hadn't heard before or didn't learn before. So this is a 3-star for me. I think if you're interested in this, it definitely doesn't hurt to read, but I think I'm done with Lee Strobel books for now. It was just kind of a middle-of-the-road book for me. I don't have a lot of opinions on it. The last book that I read in November was The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang, and this was the shelf space pick over on Jessie May's Discord and her channel. She does a monthly book club pick, and then she invites a booktuber to chat with her about the book. And in the month of November, it was Jessie May and Elliot Brooks. So I jumped blindly into this one, and I'm so happy I did. This was a fantastic read. 5 stars easily for me. This is a Japanese-inspired military fantasy. In this book, we follow a very important warrior family, and they are kind of isolated in this very cold peninsula, and there's a lot of snow, and it's a very wintry fantasy read. This important warrior family called the Matsudas has some special powers, and they kind of do like an Avatar style, like ice bending kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool. We switch between the perspectives of a mother in this family and also a son in this family. The best part about this book was hands down the characters and the character development. What Wang does with the characters was something I'd never seen before. Just the way that they relate to each other and what she does with the relationships was just blowing my mind, and I really appreciated just the limb she went out on with these characters. Some of the complaints that I've seen with this book were the overall structure. I didn't have that big of a problem with the structure. There's a bit of info dumping, I would say, in the beginning, which I think kind of turned off some people and made them not want to continue. I didn't hate the info that we got at the beginning. Also, the way the book wraps up, the last chapter maybe wasn't necessary, but I didn't hate that either. Those are the main complaints that people had with this book when we were reading it in shelf space, was really the beginning and the end, and then the middle is fantastic. And for me, the beginning and the end didn't kill this book for me at all. I didn't really mind. So this is a 5-star book for me. The magic system is cool. The characters are amazing. What happens with the plot is amazing. Definitely content warning for violence. This was an incredibly violent book. Think like Kill Bill style fighting. It was much more violent than I am used to reading. Very graphic violence. And also a trigger warning for sexual assault and some just horrific things that happen with wars and brutality against people. But those things aside, the story itself is worth the journey, and I really enjoyed this one. Next up, I went back to Sanderson and read Dawnshard, which was the novella that comes between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. Dawnshard was pretty good. It wasn't my favorite novella. I actually think I like Edge Dancer just a little bit better, I think because I like Lift more. I still like Risen, and I really liked what happened with Risen in this book, and just the disability representation in this book I thought was really well done, and Sanderson, I think, did it justice. We also get a lot of Lopin in this one, which was fantastic. Definitely some of the highlights of this novella are scenes with Lopin. There was something really interesting that happened in this one that is more Cosmere based. It's a little bit more large scope, and I'm excited to see how that ties in. It hasn't come in a lot so far in Rhythm of War. There's been like a little bit of references here and there, and I'm about halfway through Rhythm of War. So I don't know if this Dawnshard novella is going to become more important and that we're going to see more tie-ins with the rest of the Stormlight Archives books. I assume we are. For me, this was pretty good. It was a fun little Stormlight Archives snack, if you will, and I gave it 4 stars. The next 2 books that I read are in the same series. I finished the Anne of Green Gables series, so I finished Rainbow Valley and Rilla of Ingleside. Rainbow Valley is a 4-star for me. I enjoyed it. It follows the kids. It follows Anne's kids and also a neighborhood family that they befriend. One of the best parts of the Anne of Green Gables series is the antics of the children and all the trouble they get into and the sticky spots they get themselves. There's another orphan character that gets introduced. So there's the theme of the orphan coming back all the way from the beginning. Now there's another orphan in this book. And that was kind of cool to see Anne have like sympathy for this orphan because she was an orphan herself. And that's not really a spoiler. That's like the premise of the Anne of Green Gables series, is that she's an orphan. But it was a cute, sweet read, and it was a good time. So 4 stars. So while Rainbow Valley was just okay for me, Rilla of Ingleside was fantastic. I enjoyed the themes in this. It's a more serious book. I thought it was a good way to wrap up the series. In this, Anne's youngest daughter, Rilla, is grown up, and we also see them go through World War I. And you see what the characters go through. There's some just really heartbreaking moments in it. Just the reality of war and how it changes your life and how it changes society. It was hard at times. This book actually made me cry, real tears, and it was just really impactful to me. I think this is one of my favorites in the series. I plan to do a ranking video of all of the books for the Anne of Green Gables series now that I've finished them all. This one is going to be high up on that ranking for sure. Really loved this. Liked Rilla as a character too. She's so much different than Anne. She's a lot different than her mother, and I enjoyed her growth. She kind of goes from a flighty, immature character who doesn't have really any ambitions, and then throughout the book she just learns a lot more and grows up a lot. Loved this ending to the series. 5 stars. I have to figure out where it ranks in my ranking of all of the Anne of Green Gables books, but absolutely loved Rilla of Ingleside. And then the last book that I read in December was Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I actually have a separate book review video of this one, which I will link down below if you're interested. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details in this video, but I read this for the World Hoppers Secret Santa Buddy Read Exchange. This was an initiative put on by Andy Smith, who is a fantastic booktuber, and this was just such a great idea. So thank you, Andy, for putting this together. So I signed up to participate in this. We each got assigned to a booktuber, and we had to research that booktuber and then figure out kind of their favorite book or a book that meant a lot to them, and then we were supposed to read it. So I got Vish from Books with V. I'll have her channel linked down below if you somehow don't know Vish. Definitely if you're a fantasy reader, you probably already know about Vish, but if you don't, please check her out. She's a great person in the shelf space community, and she is so lovely. I just adore her channel. We are going to buddy read something in January, and I'm very excited for that because I've never buddy read with her before. But Vish's favorite author is Sarah J. Maas, and that is an author that I had never tried before. So I was like, well, better now than never. And I tried Throne of Glass, and I think if I had read this book like back when it came out like 10 years ago, I think I would have liked it a lot more. I think just now I can see too many flaws in it for me. I didn't gel with the writing. It wasn't for me. I'm not sure I'm going to continue in the series. I'm a little bit curious, but at the same time, the writing style is, I think, something that might get to me a little bit. So I would hate for that to just affect my enjoyment of the story as a whole. But I think if a younger version of Victoria would have read this book, I think I would have liked it. But I think I'm just too old for where this book starts. I know that this starts as YA but becomes more adult. A lot of people have told me that, so it makes me a little bit interested and curious to continue with these. They're so very well loved, and I just don't know if I can be one of those people because of the writing that I just didn't get along with. And I go into a little bit more detail in the book review, so you can check that out if you're interested. For me, Throne of Glass had some interesting plot development things, and there were definitely some things where I latched onto and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. There's this magic system that is kind of set up but not gone into very far. The focus is definitely a lot more on the relationships and the romance in this first book, and it was definitely an addictive read. Once I got to the ending, I thought the ending was really strong. Just leading up to the ending, it took me quite a while to buy into it. So Throne of Glass, I'm giving it a 2-star, I think, for me. And I'm so sorry that I didn't like this one, Vish, but it was maybe just not for me. I think if I had read this as a younger reader, I definitely would have loved it. And I know that that's a big part of the enjoyment with people that like grew up with this series and read it from a younger age and then they grew up with the series. I think for me, I'm just too old now. But I'm really glad I tried it. Now I can say that I've tried a Sarah J. Maas book. And who knows? We'll see what happens with this one. Maybe I'll continue with the second book and give it a shot. We'll see. Those are all the books that I read in the month of November and December. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you had any thoughts that were similar or different from mine. You can follow me in various places down in the description box. I have a Goodreads, I have an Instagram account, and then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon if you want to be notified every time I post new bookish videos. Thank you all so much for watching and for being here today, and I hope you're reading something amazing, and until next time, bye-bye.